Winona County. Item 2 is the approval of the May 27th, 2025 meeting.
Minutes, I will move to approve those minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the meeting minutes from May 27th, 2025. Any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, they are approved. Chairperson's report. We did have a SHAC, the State Community Health Service Advisory Committee meeting 2 weeks ago. The Commissioner of Health was there. I have to say she was kind of rattled with budget cuts and cost shifts and reorganizing.
Not firing.
Yeah, reorganizing staff leaving. I think a number of their staff were under, like contract, and I think they skipped their contract. So to say the least, I think she was a little unprepared. And then one of the big items that was discussed was trying to change some of the funding. We've always gone by population-based formulas and different things, and they're looking at a big chunk of money to change some of the funding apparatuses for all counties, and that's something to be worked through. I did have to leave just a little early because I had a MCIT meeting. Did you Zoom?
I did it on.
Yeah, what was your take on?
Yeah, I thought probably the thing that stood out to me the most, I mean, they had that exercise with the fold up doll thing. That was dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was dumb. But
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
the commissioner's talk was probably the most significant thing that took place.
Yeah.
And I thought you've recapped it pretty well.
Yeah, and it was disappointing, actually, the person who's the legislative person was on vacation or something, she wasn't there. So, I mean, I think she should have been there, but anyway. All right, and luckily, we haven't had any major outbreaks. I mean, some communities, across country, the measles is still a concern, but we're predominantly healthy in Minnesota. So moving on then, unless anybody else has any thoughts, questions, concerns? No. Okay, item 4, consent business. Approved contract with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center to support post-incarceration care coordination services for substance abuse disorders. All right.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Gwen Herbert. I'm the Executive Director of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and the Program Manager for the RAP Plus program. And I am representing Emily Volkman because she's at a conference. So I wanted to give a brief overview of RAP Plus because I think it'll help situate all of this. So as many of you know, the RAP Plus program was federally grant funded up through September 30th, 2024. And there was some gap funding that provided the ability for some hours for myself, and then the recovery support services for Q4 of last year, and then in 2025 for those same items. What we lost as a part of the federal grant was the ability for the mental health practitioners, essentially the case managers at Hiawatha Valley, who are our partners, to start working with people immediately upon release from custody or as soon as they were had applied to the program. Instead, they needed to have completed the comprehensive eval through Hiawatha Valley. It needed to be signed off on it. Then they needed to be assigned to one of those case managers. That process was taking 6 to 8 weeks. And as many of you know, that period right after release is sensitive and important. And so we were losing some folks that we know we probably could have helped if we could have done so more immediately. The services that the mental health practitioners provide after the comprehensive eval has been signed off on are then billable to ARMS through medical assistance. So we were only able to help people who are on medical assistance and then who had the recommendation through their comprehensive eval for ARMS. So then their funding through the Cannabis Substance Abuse Prevention Grant came available, and we were talking with Emily Volkman about it. And that is what this is for. So that would help reinstate the ability for those case managers to work with those people before the comprehensive eval had been completed, and this is a rare occasion for someone who was not on medical assistance. So Hiawatha Valley has provided us the contract that you'll see and will be a part of the consent agenda later. as a flat rate per month for the rest of the year to provide those services to be paid for through that CSEP funding of the 28,000, and then with some remaining funds from the RAP Plus budget that are currently already appropriated.
So, questions? A flat fee, I guess I didn't understand that it was a flat fee and they'll handle how many ever people need to be helped. But was that full funding for just the rest of 2025? Because it was like 28,000 and 12,000 or something like that.
Yep. So that flat fee is the 5,800 amount that's on the very last page of the contract. So 5,285.50 a month. And yeah, I can, maybe Eric can speak to the flat fee decision, but yes, he provided a fee for the rest of the remaining months of 2025, and then the fee what it would be in 2026, although this contract is only for 2025, excuse me.
2025, yeah, so this
And
year.
we do not currently have funding, but you'll see later also on the consent agenda that I'm applying for the Minnesota Offices of Justice Programs Community Crime and Intervention and Prevention Grant that would sustain, or if awarded, give money to fund that in an ongoing way.
So Eric Sievers with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. The flat fee, what we did is we looked at history. So we made a decision with Karen and Kayleen that to help sustain the program and our staff in it, to shift them from community health workers to ARMS, so they're Medicaid reimbursed. So a lot of the folks we work with are on Medicaid. But even with doing that, there was a gap in funding because they're doing things that the role doesn't really, that Medicaid doesn't pay for, such as pre-eval and some of more of the care coordination, case management functions. And so the funding helps these unique two individuals. It's two positions, and it's just the part that MA doesn't cover, which historically it's been that monthly amount.
But weren't there rumors Medicaid was going to get cut from the Fed?
Those are still
Still
still happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could put it in jeopardy, but you're counting on Medicare funding to help cover the gap with this.
Yeah, and the Medicaid, there's a lot to figure out yet with that, but this will help with those pieces of the role that Medicaid does not cover.
Okay.
Because
So I've always been curious about, and I get the names, what's the Minnesota health insurance policy?
Sure.
MNsure? Does MNsure cover any of this stuff? I mean, is there a private insurer that covers things like this?
no.
Okay,
no,
so
no.
shouldn't we be lobbying MNsure or some to cover this versus county? Well, this is grants and everything, but, and not bring it back to a county tax subsidy?
Yeah, a comparative. So for 15-ish years, we've had a school-based mental health program where we have providers in the schools, and periodically over those 15 years, we've reached out to private health insurances because they're providing a service beyond what kids and families get, and it hasn't been successful. That doesn't mean this wouldn't be. But to be honest, we're trying to just hold on to Medicaid funding right now. So to secure that, and a lot of efforts with that, and if we secure that, then it would be asking others to fund it. But this has been a Medicaid benefit
Okay.
probably
So we
10,
have-
12, 10, 15 years.
So we have to watch Medicaid.
Yeah,
Medicaid.
Medicaid.
From everything that I've understood and read, the idea is to cut Medicaid. They just want to cut the fraud and the waste out of it is what they're really looking to do.
Yeah, and people with mental health, or some people who are eligible today for Medicaid with mental health conditions, what they're looking at is increasing what they need to do to show that they are eligible because of their disability.
Yep.
Our concern is some of the folks are very disabled and will need a lot of help and support to prove that they are still eligible.
Mhm.
So that,
Yeah, that's going to be time consuming to have that eligibility question.
There's one more piece to this too, assuming that Medicaid stays in some sort of semblance of its current form. One of the biggest issues, particularly because the Rest Plus programs, majority of their clients are coming from incarceration, is that insurance, all insurance, private or public, is paused while incarcerated, and then the responsibility of providing healthcare while in the jail becomes, in our case, the counties. And
Right there, that seems criminal. If you had insurance before you committed the crime, you should be able to maintain your insurance after you committed the crime.
so there is a larger group of thinking around that, and Medicaid actually issued an 1115 waiver to allow that. And Minnesota is right now piloting the idea that we can, for anybody who is 90 days prior to release, would start being eligible to have coverage again, so that we can start that care coordination. So that would cover the majority of our clients who are not incarcerated for longer than that 3-month period. Yeah, they're actively taking applications for pilot sites right now, and so this could be something in the next couple of years that would be helpful.
Change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Commissioner Meyer.
I will move to approve this contract.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the contract with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center to support post-incarceration care coordination services for substance abuse disorders. Any further discussion? One last one, substance abuse. Is there a list of what's classified as substance abuse?
Yeah, I'm sure there
Because we're talking about marijuana in a few minutes,
No.
cannabis.
The grant, no.
Yeah, for the grant, there just needed to be general care coordination. That language is specific in terms of how it was worded, that, because this was money that Emily Volkman did not even need to apply for, right?
Sure.
So, but needed to submit a plan to spend. And we wanted to be clear, this would be used for people beyond those just with marijuana substance abuse diagnosis. And it was, so.
Okay, so there
that
is
answer
a
your question?
list of there is a list what is classified as substance abuse.
Um,
Tell me I drink too much coffee. I don't consider that a substance abuse, but,
But, so I guess it's two different questions. I'm sure there is that list,
okay.
but as it relates to helping people with this funding, that does not.
Don't have to
Yeah.
tag them with some. a
Suppose
specific-
if you, I mean, I don't think we would just jail you for drinking coffee in public.
Right, right.
So you're probably safe there. But
Yeah.
if it drove you to some behavior that was illegal,
Could
it could
be.
happen.
Could be. Well, again, the term substance abuse can be vague. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, passed.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen.
All right, general business, anything else to come before the Community Health Board? If not, I would entertain.
Mr.
I just looked at at our minutes that we just approved and from the last meeting.
What page are you on?
Oh, just on the,
11.
Yeah, probably 11.
yeah.
Page 11?
So didn't I just read where the Texas governor vetoed the shutting down the cannabis?
You know, I haven't followed that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
he
what-
did. He.
Now he's fighting with the lieutenant governor.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I haven't kept track of it.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about.
I guess I understood that it was, okay, so medical marijuana is legal. They're trying to outlaw the low potency products that are made from hemp. That's what they were trying to outlaw, and that's a national
I
thing.
didn't
So I
see
think
tea
that
still
the,
there.
I think the confusion is
Tea still here.
that it breaks the,
That's,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, did we, any other business to come before the county board?
Do I need to be here for the board
Yeah,
of
did-
eviction? Was I do?
Did we had a motion,
Right,
Commissioner Meyer and.
Yep.
yeah, we passed it. We passed the contract.
No.
I'll move to adjourn.
Yeah, I'll
adjourn.
second it.
Second.
Okay,
Third.
we have a motion
can
by
have it.
Commissioner Vagley, second by Commissioner Olson to adjourn. Any of those further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, we're adjourned.
Fabulous.
All right, now we have Commissioner Vagley, did you have a?
Well, I had a
technology?
technology issue, but I think I need to be here for Board of Appeal on
Okay.
equalization, right?
All right, page 12. Good evening. Let's see, we have, hold on one second. I gotta get to page 12. All right, we have, Board of, no, we don't have an agenda, do we?
It's just on the main agenda.
Okay, so we have meeting minutes that need to be approved.
Calls to order.
Okay, I called to order yes, I thought I did. The call to order the Winona County Board of Appeal and Equalization. And we have meeting minutes that need to be approved.
I move to approve those meeting minutes of the Board of Agenda
I'll
and
second.
Equalization.
Okay, we have a motion made by Auditor Treasurer and seconded by Commissioner Vagley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. I apologize, I'm struggling with, was there an agenda?
No,
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 and
it's
you just adjourn.
just on the front page here.
Yeah, okay.
That was
all
it.
right.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn made by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Elsing. We got a couple minutes, although we did have a report from the, might as well use that time.
He wants to go downstairs.
Well, he can go. We did have a couple, what did we have? Three, that the staff recommended and Commissioner Elsing wasn't able to attend. I think they were all in
The-
St. Charles.
Before that
Yeah.
approval,
Page
yeah.
Oh,
12.
yeah. Pardon me?
Page 12, where it lists our actual minutes that we just approved,
Yes.
does list those three parcels that we
Okay.
changed.
Yeah, that we went with staff recommendations.
Yep.
So I guess, the thing I always tell people is if you're questioning something, question it. Because sometimes the county has records wrong
Mhm.
or, we have things, we can be reasonable.
We are human, yes.
And such. So if there is a question on your statement, what value is and everything, it's your due diligence to question it if you want to. And I think us approving those three by staff recommendations was appropriate, seeing that we do look at them and we take that very seriously and everything. So, all right. So, motion to adjourn. Commissioner
I
Meyer
made it. I made it.
and Commissioner Elsing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we're adjourned. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
But yeah, I think they were, Josh, a couple more in St. Charles. One was a low and one was a high.
And I blame Troy for making me sick.
Thank you, second.
Yeah. After the bus tour, I went home and threw up
Oh,
and then I
Good evening.
we'll start our meeting with the public comment. As we always start every meeting, anybody in the audience or online can address the Winona County Board. We just ask that you give us your name and address, and we ask you to adhere closely as you can to a 2-minute time frame. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us? Seeing no one step forward. And online, is there anybody online that would like to address the Winona County Board? Is there anyone that would like to address the Winona County Board? And third and final time, is there anyone online that would like to address the Winona County Board? Seeing no activity, we'll move on. Item 3, approval of the county board meeting minutes from June 10th, 2025.
So moved. I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Elsing, second by Commissioner Vagley to approve the meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, meeting minutes approved. Item number 4 is the acknowledgement receipt of approved land records from December 4th, 2024.
So moved. I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Elsing, seconded by Commissioner Vagley to approve the meeting minutes from December 4th, 2024. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Consent comments and approval of the agenda. Commissioner Vagley,
Couple comments at the end, please.
comments at the end. All right. Commissioner Elsing,
Comment and discussion topic, and I'd like to just pull 6-9.
okay, 6.9. We will make that 7.0. That's all right. Right. Commissioner Olson,
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Meyer,
Nothing?
okay, Administrator Holte.
Nothing, Madam Chair.
Okay, I would like to just make a comment on 6.3, when that is read. And let's see, the 6.9 was pulled. And then, just a, 6.2, if we could make that 7.1. So we have
Put that at
clarification.
the end so that the folks from Micah can go.
Oh, it'll be very quick.
Okay.
This-
It's nothing.
Got a real quick-
Yeah, I want
That's all.
6.2. We can just make that 7.1. It'll be very quick.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay.
I didn't
All
have
right.
time to reach out for a question.
Okay, so with that, we would have an amended agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as it was amended.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Elzing to approve the amended agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the agenda is approved. Administrator Holty, would you read those into the record, please?
I'm gonna do my best to replace her on this.
Oh, okay, all right. Now your
Practice.
voice dropped a little there, Ms. Holty.
Let's see if I can get through it. Committee recommendations, 6.1, approve conditional use permit for Thomas and Linda Christopherson. 6.2 was pulled. 6.3, approve resolution to reappoint the Veteran Services Officer.
And just my comment is that Tom is in the audience. I thank you very much. It's very nice that I don't get any calls about your office. It obviously means that you're doing a great job in keeping our veterans taken care of. And I hope that we did make that a community advisory. You've had a chance to meet it one time?
One time.
Okay, and that is that going well? All right, okay, all right, thank you. But thank you for your service and thank you for your work for Winona County and all our veterans. Thank you. All right,
6.4, approve applying for Minnesota Office of Justice Programs Community Crime Intervention and Prevention Grant. 6.5, approve interim assessor appointment and professional services agreement with Mower County. 6.6, approve renewal of purchase of service and business associate agreements with Plainview, Elgin, Millville School District number 2899 for transportation of children and youth in foster care. 6.7, approve renewal of purchase of service and business associate agreements with Winona Area Public Schools District number 861 for transportation of children and youth in foster care. 6.8, approve contract with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center to support post-incarceration care coordination services for substance abuse disorders. 6.9 was pulled. 6.10, approve write-off of uncollectible accounts. 6.11, acknowledge receipt of monthly finance and budget update for May 2025. 6.12, confirm payment of disbursements.
I'll move to approve the consent business as it was read.
Second.
we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the consent business as read. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I-
Nay, or
Great.
nobody, nay. Okay, yeah, approved. All right, general business, 6.70 is 6.9, approve AFSCME Courthouse Unit Amendment 2025-2027.
I just had a few questions on that. That's not a new position, is that correct? We're not creating a new position and hiring a new person?
The title is changed. So we took a vacated position and we revamped it to be what we needed. So yes, it's a new title.
We're
But
not
it's,
hiring anybody,
right.
It-
Well,
just
we are hiring somebody,
Oh.
but it's a FTE that already existed.
We are bringing another person on. We're hiring a new person?
It will be a new person,
Okay.
You're filling an empty position though.
correct? It's not a new FTE in the sense of
Right.
another body.
So currently we have a vacancy and we're trying to
Yes.
fill it, but we're
It's a different tool.
rebranding it.
Yes.
And then, okay, so that's why it has to be added to this list. Are we removing something? Or is it just,
No,
no.
we're just adding.
Okay.
Mhm,
so it's just a new way to describe somebody
Correct.
for a vacant position?
correct.
I'll move to approve what was formerly item 6.9.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Vagley, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve. I will not support because again, it's another lost opportunity to provide a pay for performance element to our union contracts. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Nay. All right, then 7.1 is 6.2. And remember, that was the contract that we questioned because of the increase, and they did get some reduction in the services. And more importantly, I did double check in the MCIT roles. They do review contracts, and Ms. Holte advised me that they recommended this. That does help us to alleviate any potential, problems with software vendors, because we get solicited by all kinds of people have software they want to sell us, and it's all comes with a big price tag. So it is good that we have a higher level that looks for, cybersecurity, protecting us on some of these contracts. So that's encouraging that we're using that service to do that. So with that,
I'll move to approve what was 6.2, which is now 7.01, approve contract renewal with Granicus.
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Vagley to approve the contract for Garnicus. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay, it's carried. Thank you. Now we get to the 7.1, receive presentation from Minnesota Inter-County Association on annual legislative update. Well, I'm glad you have an update for us. It was a little touch and go if we would get here.
Yeah, that it was. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Nathan Jessen. I'm the executive director at the Minnesota Inter-County Association. I actually started this past January, came over from the League of Minnesota Cities. My second day was the first day of the legislative session. So lots of things were happening. So great, thank you. So I think first I just wanted to talk a little bit about like Micah's role at the Capitol. I would say that our primary role is to try to be connectors, whether it's between your staff and the Capitol or you all and the delegation, and try to find out, okay, where can you all be most helpful and your staff be most helpful, while also representing this group of counties at the state and at the Capitol. We're really at our best when, if it's not you, it's sometimes we can bring stories from Winona County to the legislature and to the delegations and try and make these statewide issues that we work on be as relatable as possible. And the other thing we do try to do is try to make our work a little more analytical, and try to provide data and background and try to think about what the impact is on the ground once laws are passed, in addition to kind of analyzing current state aids and programs and things like that. We do have our whole team here today, and they'll kind of introduce themselves as they come up to cover their issue area, but they're also listed here. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so we do have kind of regular things that we try to provide. We have a weekly legislative update, which I know always contains a lot of information, but we do try to distill it and provide some narrative there. So it's not just this number changed to that number, this bill moved through that committee, but really try to explain why things are happening too. That's a really important part of our work. We have the end of session report, which came out yesterday as well. And I would say the value of AMC is that they're a statewide organization, and there's always a lot of value and weight that comes with being statewide. And we're small enough to kind of be quick and responsive and focus on issues that are important to mid-sized counties. We're 17 counties. We added Anoka and Wright this past January. You can go to the next one. So just want to talk a little bit about the session dynamics this year. The first really big component actually happened in early December when the state budget forecast came out, projecting a $5 billion deficit in the out biennium. It did project a current small biennium surplus, but and when the governor's budget came out in January, which recommended a lot of cost shifts onto counties, including cutting state aids to counties, it really created this mindset where we were playing defense really right from the get-go at the Capitol. Whether it was cost shifts, cuts to counties or other areas, that was really the mindset. There was a veteran legislator that said to me at the beginning of the session, Nathan, this year it's not what you can get, it's what you can keep, and that was kind of our focus throughout session. It was also a difficult dynamic given the tie in the House, which is kind of unprecedented. The last time was 1979. And so we just ended up playing defense on all fronts and navigating a very new, different dynamic at the Capitol. We did end up in special session. Some bills got wrapped during regular session, about 1/3 of the state budget, 2/3 of the state budget wrapped during special session. That meant a lot of decisions happening behind closed doors. There were some working group meetings that were public, but even during some of those working group meetings, they were either perfunctory, kind of like, okay, here's the deal, we're wrapping it up. Or in some cases, like in tax committee, they were not making a lot of progress when they were meeting in public. I did want to just kind of say it, we'll have people go through issue by issue, but at the end of the day, we did end up with a budget enacted on time. And we finished this biennium essentially with a 1.9 current biennium surplus, but spending is still higher than revenues. So there is that structural balance problem that we'll be talking about likely next year and the year after that at the Capitol. If we can go to the next one. We want to talk about taxes a little bit. So the tax target ended up being a negative target of 118 million this biennium and 190 million the next biennium. So what that means is that we're looking at either a combination of reduced spending in the tax area. And when I say reduced spending in taxes, that's basically just aids to local governments, be they counties or cities. That's the spending in the tax area, or increased taxes. We did have the leadership agreement included a couple tax increases. The two only ones of significance were increasing the cannabis gross receipts tax from 10% to 15%. State sales tax also will apply to cannabis sales and currently does to THC products. And the other significant tax increase was repealing the electricity exemption for data centers on sales taxes. Data centers retain their software and hardware sales tax exemptions. On the county front, and for Winona County in particular, I did want to talk about in 2023, when the legislature legalized cannabis, they did set aside this kind of 20% dedication of the gross receipts tax to cities and counties to be split half and half between cities and counties. And the governor's budget proposed repealing it, the House budget proposed repealing it, and the Senate budget proposed repealing it. It was really difficult to kind of combat that proposed cut for a couple of reasons. First, because these committees got targets and they're trying to figure out ways to reach those targets and do as little damage as possible, according to them. And we couldn't really combat we couldn't use the cost shift argument on cannabis the way that we could with county program aid or payment in lieu of taxes or other things, because counties weren't receiving that money yet. I think each county got like a $2,100 payment last September. Obviously, that's negligible. So that was kind of the issue. That change did end up getting enacted, so that revenue source for counties is no longer going to be there. The only direct tax impact for Winona County that will come from any sale of cannabis will be on the local sales tax component. You all, I think, have a 0.25% special. And then there's the county transportation sales tax. So those sales will be cannabis will be subject to that local sales tax, just like it would be state sales tax. I did want to talk about CPA. We managed to avoid any cuts in county program aid. This is a really significant win. The Senate had proposed cutting CPA by as much as 20 million at one point. That's obviously a big issue statewide. I also think it's an especially big issue in Winona County. Winona County has $82 per capita in CPA. The statewide average is $58. So amongst all MICA counties, that's the third highest amongst any MICA county if you're looking at per capita basis. It's 22nd highest overall. I do think talking about the per capita is a good indicator of like what it means for a county, because looking at the overall payment is just going to be so dependent on the population. When like Hennepin County, for example, they've got the highest CPA payment amongst any county, but they're actually the lowest per capita payment, right? So it's just, I think these per capita numbers are helpful. The other thing I want to talk about is avoiding any cuts to payment in lieu of taxes. The governor had proposed a straight 1/3 reduction in payment in lieu of taxes. People often think about PILT as if it's just this aid program for the northern part of the state, but it's really significant in southeastern Minnesota. I think, so my numbers here, Winona County receives about $1.1 million per year in PILT. So that's the 10th highest in the state, the second highest amongst any MICA county. And that's almost $23 per capita compared to a statewide average of $8.30. So the other thing that the cut that we did end up having to take at the end of the day was reducing aquatic invasive species aid by 50%, starting with aids payable in 2027. So I've got the number up here. That's a $44,500 cut to Winona. That's not until aids payable 2027. So next year, your AIS number will remain about the same. The last thing, there are a couple issues that are kind of longstanding MICA priorities, including the construction sales tax refund. As you all may have heard, there's this kind of, in theory, exemption that counties have to not pay sales tax on construction materials, but because you're not going to separately bid labor and materials, it doesn't really exist in practice. We did have a bill hearing to move that exemption forward this year, but it costs over $60 million a year. So it was just really difficult to get any type of momentum for that in a year where we're taking cuts and we've got these negative targets. So practically speaking, a lot of local governments end up introducing their own special exemption to get a sales tax exemption on one particular project. But this year, none of those individual proposals moved forward either, just because, again, the targets that the tax committee had, they had very little money. The special session tax bill was originally released at just 12 pages, and that's bizarrely small for any omnibus tax bill, right? It ended up at 120 pages, but even that extra 110 pages added less than like $800,000 in total cost. Also, I should have said at the top, I'm happy to take questions whenever or as we go, or we can do them at the end, whatever y'all's preference is, so.
We'd like to ask them as we go. So on this sales tax, I know, get the right, St. Cloud, Stearns County is going to, I think they've started construction, haven't they, of their Justice Center?
Yes.
It's a $223 million project. So the sales tax alone is, do you know that figure off the top of your head?
Well, so if it's $223 million project, I just have to, multiply that number by 6.875%. So it's going to be,
I mean, so we paid it when we built our
15 million. Yeah.
Yeah, 15.
Yeah.
15 million just in sales tax for building a new criminal justice center that does the work of the state. That seems criminal. I mean, that you can charge a county 15 million to do what the state says we have to do.
Yeah. And this is something that, the legislature, both Republicans and Democrats, are supportive of getting rid of this in theory, but it's just really tough to make it their top priority, especially when the price tag is that big. I actually think the cost they assume is relatively lower than what the honest cost might be. 60 million. I think it's higher than that. Like you said, Stearns County, that's one project. That's $15 million right there. It's just, we are trying to talk to the Department of Revenue and the Department of Labor and Industry about what are some other ways can we get at this that don't create the same kind of price tags, because in theory, we do have this exemption, but it was just poorly written back in 2013, frankly. And it's been an ongoing issue, but it is something we're going to try to take some more creative approaches in how we look at it next year and in future years, just to avoid that price tag problem.
Okay, thank you.
And if that's all, we can go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Amber.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Amber Backus. I'm with the firm of United Strategies and just started representing MICA on transportation issues this last legislative session. I have 4 months of seniority over Nathan. I was hired in September of last year, but I am grateful for that extra time. We do have monthly county engineers meetings where we talked about the issues, and Dave Kramer is a great participant and really helped get me up to speed on some of the issues impacting counties. So it was really helpful to have that knowledge going into this legislative session. As for the transportation bill, it was one of those bills that was not enacted during the regular session. They stopped having public meetings of the working group and the time before the special session started. The chairs were trying to negotiate a bill behind closed doors. They weren't very successful, so the bill got kicked up to leadership, and it was ultimately the Senate Finance Chair and the co-chairs of the Ways and Means Committee in the House who really put together this final package. Transportation was at a disadvantage. It had a very big budget, negative budget target to meet. They had to cut $115 million for next biennium and $133 million in 28-29. And historically, about only $330 million of the transportation budget is general fund dollars. Most of the revenues are fuel taxes and registration fees and motor vehicle sales tax that go to the trunk highway fund. And there's also special revenues for driver and vehicle services. So there wasn't a lot of general fund money to cut. I mean, they had to cut pretty much a third of their general fund budget. Largely, that general fund money is for transit in greater Minnesota and the metro area, as well as active transportation. So those areas got the biggest hit in terms of cuts. But Democratic legislators wanted to make sure that it wasn't just transit that was bearing the brunt of these costs. They wanted to make sure that roads as well, that there was some balance between the modes in terms of their cuts. So in the bill that was enacted, there was a change. Last biennium, they started dedicating the sales tax on motor vehicle parts to the trunk highway fund. And they slowed down that schedule of turning that over. So now some of that's going to stay in the general fund, which ended up being a $94 million cut to the trunk highway fund in the next biennium. However, they were able to help offset that by increasing the surcharge on electric vehicles. In 2017, the legislature for the first time imposed a surcharge on EVs. And the reasoning behind that was to capture the lost revenue from the fuel tax as vehicles are getting more fuel efficient and there are more EVs on the road. So to offset the cuts to the trunk highway fund this year, they increased that EV surcharge anywhere from $150 to $250 based on the value of your vehicle. And that raised $76 million. So the net loss to the trunk highway fund for the next biennium is only around $18 million. How that hits CASA is there's still a little increase next biennium of $3.8 million, but in the out biennium, it's an $8.6 million cut to the CASA formula for counties around the state. One bright spot was despite the tough target, there was some additional money set aside, $3 million for the local government road wetland replacement program. I know you have a lot of wetlands here in Winona County, so when there's a road construction project and wetlands are impacted, this program provides the funding to create new wetlands elsewhere to offset the loss of that habitat. And it was great to actually have some general fund cash for this. Historically, this program is funded through bonding, and there's limitations on how you can use those dollars. So the general fund dollars gives the Bowser, the agency that oversees this program, a little more flexibility. And I don't have it on this slide, but I should also mention, since you have a license center here in Winona County, there were reimbursement for no-fee transactions provided in the transportation bill. So things like an address change on your motor vehicle or some of the transactions related to veterans with a total disability that don't pay any fees right now, you can get reimbursement when you're helping them out. And the ranges are anywhere for $2 to $12, depending on what that transaction is. So that should help since the deputy registrars have been under attack so much the last few years and have been a loss leader instead of helping you with your county budgets. If we could go to the next slide, please. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about things that didn't make it into the final bill. There were a lot of policy provisions that didn't make it that we were happy to see not be in the bill, but we were hoping the first bullet on the list there was going to make it. Last biennium, the legislature enacted a new program where the impacts of greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled had to be considered when you're building a highway capacity expansion project. And when that program was created, they didn't provide any funding for the mitigation to do so. So we were hoping this session we could at least get some funding as well as have more details about the implementation of this program because it's kind of fuzzy right now. And unfortunately, we weren't successful. We are going to keep an eye on it though, because MnDOT was estimating the cost of trunk highway projects with this mitigation could increase anywhere from 5 to 40%. And that's pretty big numbers for highway projects. The things that we were hoping to either change or prevent from being in the bill then were changing the state aid design standards. Right now, MnDOT has rules that determine what county and city roads, how they should be built, the geometrics, all that sort of thing. And the engineers appreciate that uniformity. It's helped reduce crashes on our roads as well as provide some consistency when roads across jurisdictions. That provision was promoted by the Senate to be more flexible at the local level, but it was done so in a way that could have created chaos. So we're glad that that didn't make the final package. There was also language in the Senate bill that would have expanded how trunk highway funds can be used. Right now, they are dedicated to roads and bridges. This would allow the state share of those funds to also be spent on transit, on active transportation, and a little bit on greenhouse gas mitigation. And that was a big concern, especially for legislators on both sides of the aisle from greater Minnesota, where you don't have as much of that, and those revenues would be diverted to that when there's already significant needs on the highway side. The legislature also was interested in setting some speed limits themselves on some county roads, which again gave the county engineers a lot of heartburn. That should be something that's decided by the locals.
What did they want? They wanted to lower them, or
They wanted to lower them.
they wanted to lower the speed on county?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes, it was instances, one of them, there was a school went up and that makes sense, but the locals hadn't looked at having a school zone speed limit. I mean, it was kind of crazy. So it was a lot of bad information that had trickled up to the state level that was driving these proposals. So that was not in the final bill. Then also, there was a Senate proposal that would have created a new fund administered by MnDOT to provide revenue to businesses who have a loss of business due to a highway construction project. When the proposal started, it would have been every road authority would have been charged 1% to put in this fund, 1% the cost of a project to do this. And there really weren't great parameters about who could qualify and how you would disperse that money. And MnDOT wasn't interested in being in charge of an economic development program. So that didn't make the bill, but will be something to look forward to because I think people appreciate those impacts on businesses can be tough, but at the same time, having it come out of the local road fund when those dollars are so scarce was problematic. So that is what was dropped. And if we go to the next slide, want to talk about the bonding bill. This was an unexpected and great win. We weren't sure if there wasn't even going to be a bonding bill this year. It takes a 3/5 majority of each body to pass one, which requires the Republicans and Democrats to get along and work together on something. And with such a tightly divided legislature, that was very difficult. In actuality, there was never a House bill or a Senate bonding bill that passed either body in the regular session. Towards the end, the Senate released a spreadsheet, a wish list of things they might do if there were one. But that hadn't happened in the regular session. In the special session, it was when they announced the agreement around that and the parameters for that, that we learned there would be a bonding bill. It was $700 million. It was really Senate Minority Leader Mark Johnson who was the one who helped get this across the finish line because he hadn't been engaged in any of the leadership discussions earlier in the session with regards to the global agreement and targets and that sort of thing. But he did sign on for special session and he insisted there be a bonding bill and that there be more money allocated in it for roads and water. So that was great for us. So programs like the Local Road Improvement Program received $42 million. $20 million for the local bridge rehabilitation program, and then another $5 million for that local government road wetland replacement program. So $8 million total this session. And those numbers far exceed anything that had been discussed when, people were talking about what a bill could look like. I think the only money initially people thought that there could be if there were a bonding bill for these would be maybe $3 million for the wetland replacement and $13 million for bridges. So this was a significant success and will really help counties then have additional revenues for some of those big ticket transportation projects in their districts.
Can't do much though. Those figures look big, but
I know it's
They're not
still, the need is huge. And I know that the bridge list alone is about $800 million worth of projects statewide over the next 5 years. But, that's much better than $13 million or zero if there hadn't been anything. And the hopes of doing a $700 million bill this year was that there'd still be the capacity to do at least a $700 million bill or more next legislative session. So hopefully we'll continue to see movement in this area. I should say the Senate Capital Investment Committee, half of the members are for the Transportation Committee. And when they had MnDOT before them early in the session to talk about the governor's bonding recommendations, which only had $5 million total for all transportation, they really went after him because, it just increases the cost not to deal with these sort of projects. So So great advocates there. And with that, I will turn it over to Rachel to talk about the environment part of the bonding bill.
And you can go back to the prior slide. Perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is Rachel Sosnowczyk. I am Micah's environmental liaison at the Capitol. This is my second year working with Micah, but my first time being in front of you all. So great to be here tonight. So there were just a few things that were included in the capital investment bill that are relevant for Micah's environmental priorities that we wanted to call out. The first two bullet points here on this slide will both be overseen by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So first, there was $6 million for the Capital Assistance Program or CAP funding. And prior bonding bills, from what I understand, that has been, CAP funding has been appropriated for specific local projects rather than just kind of a pool that the MPCA gets to decide what projects get funded. But what we saw with the bonding bill is that there were really no local projects included. It was kind of more of this approach of, we're going to give the state agencies funding and go from there. I think that was part of the negotiations and just in an effort to get a bill across the finish line. In conversations with the MPCA after the special session, they were not involved in the negotiations on a bonding bill. They don't really care how the money gets across the finish line as long as the money is there for these types of projects. And so, they definitely have kind of their own internal list of projects and facilities that they'd like to see some of this money go to, but that has not been shared publicly. But I think that'll be, kind of part of our next steps in having conversations with them to see where some of these dollars might go. There was also $6 million to the MPCA for a new statewide drinking water contamination mitigation program. So this is something that the governor had included in his bonding bill that was released earlier this year. And so I think just a reflection of, both from, as Amber said, the Senate Minority Leader, Mark Johnson, really wanting to see funding for water projects. And I think just a recognition, from the governor and I think all legislators that, some of these emerging contaminants are going to be really costly to address. And so we need to start putting more state resources in new ways to these.
Who gets that 6 million?
So
Public Health, MPCA?
So that's MPCA will choose how that funding is allocated. Counties are eligible recipients of that funding, but because it's a new program, it's a little bit uncertain kind of what that implementation will look like. So I think that's
how the state does it?
yes. And so, whatever they decide, but I think the MPCA, I think, is at least, especially with the CAP funding. And so I think it's fair to kind of hold them to the same standard. I think they want to be transparent and share insights on how they will choose to spend funds. But
I guess I don't have great confidence in MPCA concern from a public health perspective on drinking water.
yes.
And but it doesn't, it says drinking water, but are they more concerned about agricultural fish kills in the stream, or are they worried about what we're drinking?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's unclear as it's written in the bonding bill, but I think that's kind of where it can be our job in making sure that they understand, the range of needs. And when I do the rest of my environment update, there's plenty of money through MDH to address drinking water issues across the state.
Okay.
So there is other money available besides just the 6 million. And then I did just want to mention, even though this money doesn't go directly to counties, but there was a pretty large amount of money, 176 million to the Public Facilities Authority for local water projects. And so some of that's drinking water, some of that's, stormwater, things like that. So I know there are a lot of local, again, individual local projects, bonding projects introduced this year, and there's a backlog there. So good to see some money going out for those things.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And I think Nancy will be next.
Now, Nancy, we like to get out before the sun sets.
Yeah.
And I know you're home. You got a full-on list. right?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, I always start by, can I just give you my 30-page report for your leisurely reading? Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Nancy Selesky, and I represent Micah in the area of Public Health and Human Services, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. So I guess we're going to go to the next slide. Going into this session, I want to say that all of the county organizations had the same 3 top priorities in the health and human services space. Everybody's been talking about these issues for a number of years, and we are happy to report that we made some progress this year for sure. The first item, you're all familiar with the SSIS and systems modernization, the green screen technology that your workers are wrestling with on a day-to-day basis. The end deal was $35 million in the conference committee, the Health and Human Services Conference Committee. Going into the discussions on that or the negotiations on that, the Senate had a $10 million recommendation, whereas the House had 35. Or excuse me, they had 40. They settled at 35. We have an additional $10 million that was set aside last year. So we've got $45 million to hopefully leave the green screen technology behind us in not the too distant future, but we'll see.
And I'm sorry, Nancy, what was the estimate to fix the problem?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, 80 to $100 million. That 45 does allow us to draw down federal funds. So
You got to develop an app, everything based on an app. So we got bright young people. Can't somebody come up with an app to address this problem? I got young people out there. Work on an
Yeah.
app.
good question, Madam Chair. I'm sure there are people. I'm sure there are. The next item I would mention is min choices. That's another issue we've been dealing with for a long time. Those folks who have the same health condition from year to year, and those situations are not going to change from year to year, are put through this pretty onerous reassessment process every year that can take 8-10 hours to go through. So we've been talking about how do we streamline that for those folks. And I'm happy to say that the reassessments now can be done every 2 years with a full reassessment the third year. The client can request at any time a full reassessment, and we would provide that for them. The other thing is we are allowed to do remote reassessments for now 4 consecutive assessments. It was 2 prior to this year, so we can now do 4. And then verbal attestation takes the place of signatures for the service initiation. However, once that service has been completed or the process has been completed, then the assessor has to request a signature from the client within 30 days of the completion of that. Those were our 3 priorities that, again, we worked with the other county organizations on. There were other entities that also wanted to do more in the way of min choices, including hospitals and others. And there is language that allows hospitals to contract the service out. Counties are responsible for the oversight of those contracts, but if we're behind, they can contract that service out. They also modified the qualifications, the assessor qualifications. One only needs a 2-year degree now. And then counties do have to begin that assessment within 20 days of the request with an idea of the estimated timeline of how long that assessment is going to take to complete. And finally, the department's required to have a dashboard on assessment completions on their website. So that was the second item. The third, priority admissions, direct care and treatment. That has also been an issue for a long time. Within the system, there was a work group that got together, I think, probably a little over a year, that had county folks on it, human services commissioners, county attorneys, and sheriffs. And they came up with a number of recommendations with the other group. And some of those things were addressed this year. I just want to mention what they are. The Human Services Policy Bill did extend the 48-hour rule. They put a pause on that again for an additional 2 years. While we were happy to see that, this issue was also conditioned with the legislature dealing with capacity issues, which is what we've been struggling with for a very long time, both at the state level and frankly, the local level. So to that end, in the Human Services Bill, there's $10 million for each biennium, and then $34 million in operating expenses starting in fiscal 29. Then the good news is the bonding bill passed, and that had the additional $55 million. So with that, we have $75 million, which will fund an additional 50 beds at AMRTC. So we're very happy with that outcome as well. A couple of other things that
I'm sorry, it's probably too early to tell, but those 50 beds are available to everybody, every county, and there's not Hennepin buys 20 of them and type of thing?
There,
don't know yet.
Madam Chair, we know a little bit in that the hospitals have 10 beds. If people have been languishing in a hospital bed for a certain period of time, they get moved to the top for the next 2 years. But otherwise, it's supposed to be, those that need it, acuity-wise, the most.
Climb up and hold them.
No, that should not be.
That happens in a lot of facilities.
Yeah.
We lose capacity. Okay, thank you.
Sure. A couple of other things. I would just say that the Priority Admissions Review Panel is extended for another additional 2 years. They do have an initial report due next February of 2026. They also put $100,000 into a build-out plan for a locked psychiatric residential treatment facility within DCT. So that's something that they're also looking at. What didn't happen, I should just mention that, as you know, we've had a 2-year reprieve for those folks that have been committed as mentally ill and dangerous and are sitting in one state-operated facility waiting for a bed in another, AMRTC to St. Peter as an example. We had a 2-year reprieve, which saved counties significant money. We asked for an extension on that. That's just not something that happened this year. So starting July 1st, we start picking up that 100% when that person has deemed that they no longer need that level of care any longer at AMRTC. The estimate is about $14 million in 26, 27 statewide and $18 million in 28 and 29. And the other thing that was not addressed yet that we continue to pound on is community resources. We need beds within our facilities. We need step-down facilities in our facilities. Next is cost shifts, and I believe you have this in the presentation. We might have to bounce around with the slides here. I think there it is. So as you know, the human services is one of the biggest parts of the state budget along with education. And so they got the largest budget cut, spending cut. They needed to find $300 million in the first biennium and about 800 in the second. To that end, they said, well, we're going to maybe look to our partners, our county partners, and see what they can do to help us. This slide is illustrative of the 3 plans, the House, the Senate, the governor, and then finally the final deal that the conference committee came up with is on the right. And if you look at the bottom, just looking at the totals, you can see, where we started was significantly higher than where we did end. I would just point out a couple of things that I mentioned the MIND population. We're going to be picking that piece up. And also, there's a grant reduction of about $1.6 million. I do want to point out in the last column, there's $18 million related to MnChoices. Senator Abler has been talking about this for a while. He was looking to try and do some kind of a flat reimbursement on that. Currently, we get reimbursed through the random time moment study process. And so the Department of Human Services is charged with trying to come up with some kind of a reassess or a reimbursement process for us. They need to report that back next year.
I'm sorry, I've seen that, I think, in one of the email, but I don't think it's in our packet.
No, it's not.
It came in one of the public, documents you have, so.
Okay.
One of the updates, I know I saw it.
Okay. I do have
That's
some,
okay.
I have some hard copies. Do you want it?
No, I mean,
Okay,
you
okay,
could just
as long
look
as
at
you
the
get-
update.
okay.
Yeah, it was in there.
Yeah, it was the 42-page end of session thing
Yeah,
that came out today.
yeah.
Page 18.
Yeah. The colors
Um,
caught my attention.
Like I said, yeah, it's a good graphic
Yeah.
with good information. I would just point out in that last column again, counties at one time were going to be picking up a residential cost share relative to disability waivers. And in the end, they dropped that, but we are part of a work group that's supposed to find human services savings within the human services system. And they are banking $89 million on our finding that. So that gives us a couple of years to figure that out. But just so you know, those two last numbers are whether is the $61 million or the 151 if we do not find that savings. So those.
That's interesting. They expect, so who makes up that work group? County?
So, yeah, I should have mentioned that. Micah has two appointments, AMC has 2, Maxa has 2, and then other folks within the human services space.
So, yeah, well, it's good and bad. I mean, the people that do the work should be able to find the things, but it's amazing that they're elected to do the job and they delegate it back.
We're their partners, you know.
Yeah, yeah, right. I do have to make a comment, though. You do know that you asked that you have to sign something every 2 years or something? Do the legislatures know that we are not teaching cursive in our public schools? What makes an X look different from the next X? They don't teach cursive. So, I mean, there's people that don't know how to sign their name. I don't know what they do, but maybe you could bring that up to them sometime.
Be happy to do this, Madam Chair.
Each cursive.
As it relates to these cost shifts, I just have to call out Representative Jacob. He was on the conference committee and he was a great county voice. We met with him a lot and he certainly had the experience and the ear of the folks. And it was good to have him on that committee because he didn't vote for that bill. And usually if you don't vote for the bill, you're not going to be on the conference committee. They put him on that conference committee for the county voice. So that was very helpful. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to move on to, or I think I have to go back. I'm sorry. Yep, here we go. So the Health and Human Services Bill, which is where a lot of the public health information is, that was chaired by Senator Wickland, Representatives Backer and Bierman. They also had a negative spending target, but not as deep as Human Services. It was $50 million and $175 million. This is where the $35 million for the SSIS money lives. So that was a huge issue for us. Another couple things I would mention is the EMS and ambulance services issue has been an issue, especially in greater Minnesota. They did put some money into it this year, $16 million into the ambulance operating deficit grant program. And then money also for the rural EMS uncompensated care pool and also into education reimbursement. One of the things that I like to mention with EMS is non-emergency medical transportation is something that counties have been working with or on in the system for some time. When I started with MICA, which I think it's like 15 years ago now or so, the state ran that and it was run by a broker and it was managed by the state. And in the middle of the night during conference committee, we were gifted that as a good partner. So we took that over. And, 15 years later, we're going full circle and it's going back to the broker model. And I think we, by the way, in the metro area engaged with the same broker when we were running it and still the same broker, I believe, will be operating it back at the state level. So just want to mention that. Couple of other things in terms of the Health and Human Services Bill, they did put money into extending the audio-only telehealth provision for 2 years. And then I want to mention public health. I know that this is near and dear to your heart, Madam Chair. They put $2.6 million into infectious disease prevention. They partially replaced the cut from last year on public health. Last year, they cut $3.6 million a year. It had to do with the local and tribal public health grants for cannabis-related prevention. They cut 3.6 last year. They partially replaced it with $2.5 million this year. Other things, they did cut the emergency preparedness grant by $850,000 a year, and they also reduced the public health infrastructure pilot projects by $4 million a year. They also raised a myriad of Department of Health fees, and that's how they kind of came up with the money for public health, along with capturing some unexpended grants, et cetera. They also did return $21 million to the Healthcare Access Fund for the repeal of the public option and the appropriation that went with that. And then they did some things with prior authorization to save some money. And then the elimination of Minnesota Care for Undocumented Adults. That's savings of $56 million in the first biennium and $91 million in the second. So that is where they found their savings in that bill. What didn't happen, just want to mention a few things. You all know that the Minnesota African American Family Preservation Child Welfare Disproportionality Act, also known as the Act from now on, is going into effect statewide January of 2027. There is a pilot or a phase-in going on right now with Hennepin and Ramsey in that phase-in. We had talked to a number of legislators, primarily in the greater Minnesota area, about the other 85 counties needing to be phased in here as well. We just don't think we're going to be ready for this, for it to be showtime at this point. We were basically told it's premature, work with a statewide working group, which is just getting underway. They've had like three meetings thus far. Just want to call out the commissioners there. MICA's commissioners are Otter Tail County, Kurt Mortensen, and then Carla Bigham from Washington County are the two MICA appointees, along with Commissioners Angela Conley and Joan Lee from Polk County. They are to have an interim report of their findings by January, and I don't know what that's going to look like yet because they, like I said, they're just getting underway. They have some subgroups that have been appointed, and they're starting that process. But We will see what that looks like. We will have time next year to adjust this, and I think that's something that'll be on everybody's priority list. If we're not ready, we do not want to fail. I mean, it's not something that anyone wants to make a mistake in. There was also language that I would mention that would have prevented counties from contracting for case management services, and that was offered as an amendment, withdrawn. I think there'll be more discussion on that. It involved a family, kind of a prominent, a very well-known family from Ramsey County that's at the Capitol, and they're both disabled and they lost their housing. And so, and she happens to be city council. And so there was some, some politics involved there. I think we'll see some discussion on that, but that would be a disaster for counties if we were to lose that ability to contract. And the other thing I would mention is the Senate Judiciary Chair had a proposal that would have established a civil commitment coordinating division within the office of the Attorney General's office. And that did not make it into it. It kind of, the way it was phrased, it was very duplicative of what we're already doing. And so in the end, that was dropped from consideration. And then one other thing I just would mention, that there was consideration of raising the provider tax from 1.8% to 2%. That did not happen. It was amazing what that 0.2% would have raised to. I mean, it was an incredibly huge number, but that did not happen. It remains at 1.8%. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you dare. I don't know. There's a lot in human
It's
services.
overwhelming, and thank you for trying to explain it. And I know our staff works with it, and thank heavens they know it better than I.
Yes, I call upon your staff all of the time. Yeah.
Well, I would say at the last board meeting, I think the icebreaker was for everyone to say what the biggest win was, right? And the top three were not pushing back on the cost shifts, the additional beds for mental health. What was the third thing?
SSIS.
Yes, there you go. Being able to have updated technology. I've been hearing about that for forever.
Just need an app. It all can be done on an app. I mean,
We gotta find them.
It's going to be interesting to see if the legislature will be called back into special session, depending upon what plays out in Washington, DC. Because that is going to have a tremendous, what is it, half of the state budget is health and human services, et cetera. And a third of it is from the federal government, and a third of that is HHS. So to me, we're not done yet.
No.
So we may need to see you again. Probably just you, but yeah. Nothing against the rest of you, but yeah.
Madam Chair and Commissioner, we're not sure what that's going to look like. And there's so many dynamics in St. Paul. We're going to have to, after things settle down in a few weeks, there's going to have to be a special election and things that we've not talked about yet because it's premature to do so. But yeah, we're worried. There is a healthy rainy day fund, whether they want to tap into that at this point. I think there's over $3 billion, 3.2 or something like that. But yeah, it's going to be significant, I believe.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And the way I said that last comment, I want to clarify. I'm glad that you're all here. I'm grateful that you guys come in person versus the Zoom option. So I just want to let you off the hook in terms of. But I'm so very grateful to come down to little Winona County.
Happy to be down here. All right, we can go to the next slide, and I'm back to talk about the rest of our environment. Oh, sorry, the slide after. I forgot we had the charts.
Oh, keep going, I
Oh,
think.
so many. Okay.
Yeah.
Geez, Nancy, how many slides does Nancy have? Okay. So I wanted just to start with just a reminder of what some of our priorities were for environment issues heading into 2025. I think maybe a little bit unique to some of the other issue areas is this work plays out across 5 or 6 different committees at the Capitol. And so there are a lot of things to track and a lot of different places to track them. I spend a lot of my time at the Capitol talking about solid waste issues. And I think counties are very much a trusted resource when it comes to solid waste management. Was in a number of committees where, we had various county commissioners testify, or we had submitted testimony that was, called out and highlighted by members of that committee when we're telling them, this is what we need, these are the challenges we're facing, and this is what would help. That is, legislators listen to that. And so thank you all for your support. Just some of the other issues, there was a little bit of conversation around Emerald Ash Borer. I know that, at this point, I think you all have dealt with that. We're just seeing that now still spreading to other parts of the state. But we know that there's still more work needed to be done there. Lots of conversation this year in particular, especially in the tax committee around aquatic invasive species. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then groundwater contamination, and down here in Winona County, the response to the 2023 EPA petition around nitrate contamination. But there's other types of contaminants that are concerns, and so it's great that there's been some initial resources, for you all in this region of the state. But we know that that's a statewide concern, and so. That's a place that we saw this session in particular, and just generally because of some of the funding sources available for clean water work. Lots of money spent in that topic. We can go to the next slide. So just kind of an overview and kind of context and some high level updates. As Nathan mentioned in kind of his initial kind of session context slide. A lot of the committees whose jurisdiction covers our environment priorities had lower negative targets. And so when it comes to things, especially like with solid waste, right? Like what we're asking for there, what we need there is money, is funding to support the projects and the good work that counties do. But that's very difficult to ask for in a year where there's just not a lot of money to go around. Legacy is an exception for sure, just with the Clean Water Fund and having that, $300 million just spent just on Clean Water Fund activities. I know that Winona County and Micah are well represented with Commissioner Meyer. And so grateful to have that expertise being shared with that group. And then I mentioned the bonding bill, the funding that was passed there. We'll call out again the 50% reduction in aquatic invasive species aid. I know, there are some Micah counties where that's hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost funding. I know it's a little bit of a smaller impact, but right, it's still an impact. That's still, $40-some thousand that you all don't have. And so, acknowledge that is still difficult. Kind of related to solid waste issues, a lot of the conversation around solid waste is, funding and resources for counties, but also, what are other ways that we can try to reduce the amount of waste that's coming into the waste stream, and have other players, right, industries, companies that are producing this waste, have them, have some skin in the game when it comes to managing this. And so last year that really came out with the Packaging Waste and Cost Reduction Act, which we were able to get across the finish line, and that's just in the very early stages of implementation this year. We also had a conversation around legislation that would establish a similar kind of product stewardship program for electronic waste and batteries, just knowing again, the toxicity that those products are bringing into the waste stream and the additional cost and dangers that come with those products. But I think, because we had this great success last year, that did create a little bit more pushback, and especially just with the political dynamics at the Capitol and there being, a tie in the House and just a one-seat DFL majority in the Senate. I think a lot of hesitancy and, let's see what happens with the packaging bill and how that works before we start expanding to other types of products. But we were able to protect that packaging bill. Again, there were, a lot of industry folks coming in who would like to see that rolled back and significantly amended and make a lot of major exceptions to that. And so we were able to, to kind of keep that at bay for now. And there really wasn't a lot of public conversation around that, in committee or on the House or Senate floor. So that is good for now. But do expect that will continue to be, the kind of concept of product stewardship in general will continue to be a discussion at the Capitol. And then, the packaging bill, especially next year, I think we'll see that push continue. Data centers were, I would say, an unexpected point of contention. I know Dakota County has a lot of projects. I don't know if that's as much of if there's things that are being scoped out in Winona County as much, but there were a lot of concerns from, environmental advocates around specifically the water and electricity usage that those types of projects require. And so I'll talk a little bit, but there were some, kind of water protections included as part of a standalone data centers bill. And I think just the fact that there needed to be a standalone data centers bill really shows how much of a sticking point that really ended up being in some of those end of session negotiations, is they had to just take it out and have it be its own thing that was negotiated amongst leaders. And then again, lots of conversation around Emerald Ash Borer, but not a lot of action, not a lot of resources ultimately put towards that, which is unfortunate. And then the next slide and my last slide, or I think maybe this is in two different slides. So again, I mentioned the legacy bill and the clean water funding that was included in that. Really good numbers. To your question earlier, Chair, just on some of the funding there, the MDEA has about 33 million coming out of the legacy bill, and the Department of Health has around 30 million. And those are going, I think, to the types of activities that would be particularly relevant for your county and kind of your concerns around clean water. For the environment bill, I covered some of this already, but we'll just say that they had to cut $6.5 million in general fund dollars in the next biennium, and they got just a couple million additional dollars to spend looking into 2028 and 2029. So really not any major changes we're seeing there, but one of the ways that they were able to meet those targets is they did increase some fees. They increased watercraft surcharges, so just different dollar amounts depending on the type, size of boat and what it's being used for. And that money will go to aquatic invasive species management. That's money that's going to the state. And so again, doesn't always trickle down maybe in the way that we'd like to see in counties, but good to see additional resources going to that work. And then also increases in water permits and usage fees, and that will go towards groundwater protection activities. And then lastly, in the environment bill, they did increase the amount of money coming out of the closed landfill investment fund, which that statute language is going to expire this summer. So they extended that another 4 years to 2029. And then that was set at $4.5 million that MPCA could access for those types of projects or those activities. And now that's at $6.5 million. So they get a little bit more.
What's CL?
The closed landfill investment fund.
Okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
yes. So that was in the environment bill. And then I think the next slide, I think this one is actually my last slide. Okay. So the tax bill, we did a lot of really great work. And as from what I understand, this is just my second session with Micah, but we talked a lot about this in 2024. And from what I understand, this has been an ongoing conversation around county score grants and getting that remaining 27% of the solid waste management tax revenue that's collected, getting that actually to the counties for their work to manage waste in a better way. I think especially as we're facing down the 2030 deadline for meeting state mandated recycling goals, this is going to feel just increasingly, we are going to make this increasingly top of mind for lawmakers. Nathan kind of gave an overview of the dynamics in the tax committee. The money wasn't there. This would cost around $32 or $33 million a year. And so it's not a small amount of money, and the money just wasn't there in the tax committee. So really good work, had 35 House members on our House bill, members of both parties, every member of the tax committee, almost every member of the environment committee. Every legislator understands, in theory, why this needs to happen, why this money should be going to counties for this work. But when the resources aren't there, there's only so much that you can really do.
So before next session, get a couple dumpsters, put them out front of the gold horses, and then every time we come to the Capitol or anything, bring a bag of recyclables or garbage and throw them in the
Yes.
appropriate.
Good
dumpster.
creative visual.
Creative
Yes.
visual.
I mean, yeah, but again, this is a place where I think the reason that we're even able to get this bipartisan support is because it's counties that are pushing for this and that have done such a good job of explaining to their lawmakers why this work and this funding is so important. So I think this is something that will, like I said, continue to really push on. But unfortunately, just again, with the tax target this year, there was not additional funding for SCORE.
Garbage or recyclables? Or both?
I would say both. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can
I
do
think
that.
both. And then finally, the data centers bill. Just some of the water protections that were included as part of that, just in case that is ever going to be a thing that you're looking at here in Winona County, is there's a pre-application evaluations of water usage requirement, and then a couple new permit conditions. So An applicant has to ensure that they're taking adequate measures to protect public health. They have to reasonably consider, which, maybe leaves a little bit of wiggle room, but reasonably consider water conservation and watershed health. And then if it's determined that, there's maybe a concern about the water usage a project would require might exceed the water that's available in a given area, then the applicant would conduct an aquifer test. And the last thing that I'll actually say is I know last year there was some funding in the agriculture bill to, again, address that 2023 EPA petition around nitrate contamination. We did not see any significant or really any funding in the ag bill for that type of work this year. There was a small amount of money for an evaluation of Olmsted County's soil health and water program. I think they had asked for a larger amount to try to spread that model to the rest of the region and potentially beyond that. But we're starting with a study and then maybe we'll see where things go. So happy to answer questions that folks have.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. We can advance. Awesome. My name is Emilio Lamba. As you saw previously, I am part of MICA as an informational resource in our public safety and correction space. I do still represent Winona on behalf of the Association of Minnesota Counties for where I'm the public safety policy analyst. So looking at public safety and corrections, once again, we saw it combined with the Judiciary Committee. It was one of very few committees this session that received a positive target, of which it was actually the highest with $107 million available to spend. I will note to you all that the majority of that funding was dedicated to the Department of Public Safety and Department of Corrections for their operation adjustments and deficiency requests. The little amount of money that was left over after that was put towards a lot of law enforcement training programs, such as the Philando Castile training fund, as well as the establishment of the Minnesota Victims of Crime account, where resources and supports would go towards individuals that were victims of crime. Things that were very notable for our counties in our public safety correction space really come around our community supervision. There was not a lot of changes in this area, was not extremely consequential this year. However, we were able to institute a 3-year averaging into our community supervision formula. This was really critical because a lot of trends right now are showing that our year-over-year total populations across our state and our counties are going to continually decrease as a result of previous legislation that is passed. So now we are going to allow our counties to include the most recent 3 years that come out of that probation survey that's done by the Department of Corrections. From 2022 to 2023, I think we saw around a $9 million drop in what would have been allocated for the statewide pot of funding. So this 3-year averaging is going to allow us to have a little bit more predictability and stability for our counties. For Winona County, who contracts with the DOC for these services, this is very important because your guys' subsidy now will stay at a little bit of a higher level, and the Department of Corrections will be able to provide still a higher amount of staffing as well as resourcing. One change that is not up on the screen that we worked with the DOC a lot on, and I'm sure your finance folks will be really excited about, is your finance folks no longer will receive your subsidy and then have to be billed back by the DOC. The DOC reached out to us and said that it was causing a lot of confusion. So now the DOC will retain the funding and provide the staffing as well as the programming, and then your staff will receive a detailed report of everything that was administered to your county at the end of the year for your guys' transparency. Additionally, does not really apply much to our DOC county since they've already sunsetted, but supervision fees are extended now till 2029, previously set to sunset in 2027. So for counties that did utilize this tool, it would allow them revenue until we are able to fully fund our community supervision formula, which did receive increased investments in 2023, but still not at the level in which we know it's necessary. One thing, again, that Winona County would be a little bit happy about here is the proration of the Interstate Compact Unit. This unit resides at the DOC, although a separate unit in state function, manages the transfer of individuals on supervision between states. So a lot of our partnering states, North Dakota, Wisconsin, will have individuals on supervision that transfer between them. What was previously occurring was the Department of Corrections was utilizing simply the subsidies from DOC counties to pay for the functioning and operations of this unit. It's now landed in a more equitable space where it's now spread out across all 87. So that should raise Winona County subsidy up a little bit more and still for the DOC provide a little bit more support and funding and resources for Winona County. One thing that actually received a lot of support and actually was included within the Senate's final proposal, but was removed in the 11th hour in the agreement that ultimately saw the closure of the Stillwater Prison, was continuation of the 25% state share of the sentencing to service program. Unfortunately, that was in agreement with the governor and leadership, I want to say about an hour before the conference committee. So unfortunately, that 25% share of funding was sunset and was agreed on by the conference committee prior to the end of the regular session. We've worked a lot with the DOC, and I've dug in a little bit more because a lot of counties are considering or potentially considering continuing the sentencing to service program and picking up that additional 25%. If a county does choose to go forward with that, one thing that I've been looking into is where does that liability land if an individual is injured or worse while still on a work site. Currently, right now, the statute that outlines that is still active and not repealed as a result of the state's 25% share. So our understanding is that their removal of funding for the program does not absolve them of the liability for authorizing a program to exist. And so a county would continue as the investigating authority should any of those claims come about, submit them to the Department of Corrections, and the DOC will reimburse that. Last, in the community supervision space, we saw changes to the Minnesota Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act. Really, these changes just allow a little bit more of a tougher on crime approach, allowing the commissioner now to revoke earned incentivized release credit from individuals. Previously, that was not revocable, and also requiring the commissioner of corrections to consider public safety factors as well as individual stability and behavior prior to applying their earned incentivized release credit. And then lastly, on the page, you'll see here the full decommissioning of the Stillwater Prison is scheduled for 2029. This, again, as I mentioned, was something that came about an hour before the conference committee was set to meet in a deal with leadership in the governor's office. A lot of pressures mounting with the Department of Corrections. Necessary operating adjustments and deficiency requests led to this. As many people are aware, the Stillwater Prison, which is located in Bayport, actually, had $180 million in deferred maintenance and was likely set to see some level of a decommissioning scheduled in the future. However, this created sort of the perfect storm for them to execute it a little bit quicker.
So is our crime rate down in the state of Minnesota that would put people in prison?
So with that, we've reached out to the Department of Corrections and asked them a little bit more about that. Our initial response to them was, what impact is this going to have on our counties? Are you going to put more individuals on supervision as a result of the closure of this prison? What we've received back from Commissioner Schnell and Assistant Commissioner Kelly Mitchell was that this will have no impact. They anticipate right now with their numbers, they have capacity at existing facilities, and in the way in which they previously anticipated MRA to unfold, that there will be no increase or changes to what they already previously informed our counties on. So as far as
Writing?
yeah, so we're continuing contact with them on that, and we're being good partners. So as far as the crime rate, I would say it's not drastically down in a sense that would, maybe push them towards this. However, it was more of a financial move as well as the existing condition of that facility.
Sure.
And that is what I had for public safety and corrections. As I said, it wasn't super consequential this year, but we were able to avoid any proposed cost shifts or any cuts. And actually for Winona County, a lot of the cost expansions, such as that proration of the interstate compact unit, actually does help the county with their subsidies. So I'm willing to stand for any questions. Okay, thank you, guys.
Don't break any laws that put you in jail on the way back.
Okay, back to me. We can go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple issues, earned sick and safe time and paid leave. It's pretty ordinary for the legislature a year or two after they pass a really big new program or law change to look back and say, okay, let's smooth out some of the cracks here. We were pursuing some changes to these programs, like evenly splitting the employee-employer retention premium, or sorry, not retention, the premium rate for paid leave, or trying to make sure these benefits don't stack up on one another. We were able to get some momentum in the Senate on that, on earned sick and safe time specifically. They did pass a bill with almost all Republicans and a number of Democrats voting in favor of it. We didn't really get any momentum on the House. The issues kind of got wrapped up in other questions and proposals around these programs, like small business exemptions that weren't really related to our requests, but that people felt really passionate about one way or the other. And it was really difficult, even when we were meeting with DFL members, they're like, oh, some of what you're saying makes sense, but it was difficult to get those issues to move forward when those other bigger, broader issues were kind of the focus at the Capitol. What did happen for the paid leave is that the premium rate cap got reduced from 1.2% to 1.1%. But right now, the total rate is 0.88%. Previously, it had been initially estimated, I think, 0.77. So there's not going to be an impact on your county budget there. It's just saying that it can't go higher than 1.1. But we're at 0.88 right now. On earned sick and safe time, there were some kind of really small changes that were made, kind of thrown into the deal the Friday before special session. And this was changing the notice requirements for employers, for employees to as reasonably required by the employer instead of as soon as practicable. It's difficult to say exactly what that difference will be, but I think it makes a little bit more sense. And then the other,
That again?
so
They changed
under
it from-
previous law,
it
the
was-
notice requirement for employees that they were going to use earned sick and safe time was as soon as practicable. And now the law is as reasonably required by the employer.
Oh, it's reasonably required, okay.
So, yeah. The other change that was made, under previous law or prior to enactment, if you were an employee taking more than 2 days of earned sick and safe time, you had to provide some type of medical document, or sorry, more than 3 days previously. If it was more than 3 days previously, you had to provide some type of documentation, and now that's changed to more than 2 days. So before you could have 3 days of ESST without providing any documentation consecutively, and now that's just 2. So those are pretty minor changes, but those did go into law. A couple other quick things. In 2023, the legislature changed the absentee ballot drop-off deadline from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. This year, they moved that back to 5 p.m. Yeah, we did. But this is one of the things we push mostly on election issues, to be honest with you. We defer to MACO on Minnesota Association of County Officers. This is one area where we did try to help out and move this deadline just because there are a lot of counties that we've just been hearing from that like, hey, we think it would be helpful, even if we don't get all the way back to 3 p.m., to go to 5 p.m. On the open meeting laws, the change allows remote participation for public meetings from to a location that's not open and accessible to the public. So previously, participating remotely from a location that's not open and accessible had been limited to 3 times a year just for medical or military purposes. And the capital replacement account, this is an example of something that didn't happen, but there'd been a proposal floating out there for a couple of years of requiring local governments to set aside enough money to replace a building by the time they were coming to the legislature to ask for help in building that building. We didn't think that made a lot of sense. We did work with a House author from Shakopee that changed that to requiring just a plan to maintain and preserve the building. But even that didn't end up becoming law. So we can go to the next slide. I did want to talk about pensions a little bit. Pensions is one of the rare committees that got a positive revenue target of 80 million this biennium and 80 million the next biennium. So that included, that money was largely paying for teachers and police and fire COLA increases for police and fire going from 1% to 1.25%, including a one-time bump as well that's kind of built into the base. There's also a change for para COLA increase for those general plan employees. That didn't require a general fund component. The actuaries kind of said, hey, this is something that the plan can support on its own. Couldn't do that with police and fire because it's currently one of the least stable, least well-funded plans. And related to that, there was also a change to the duty disability or PTSD law. And the one-time money that the legislature had set aside in 2023 after they saw a lot of these cases spike in 2020 had started to run out. So basically the change is that instead of these health insurance benefits being guaranteed to age 65, they're guaranteed for 5 years. But I should say this is just prospective. moving forward. If you're already getting that health insurance benefit, you're still guaranteed to 65. And yeah, so that is pensions. Oh, one more thing on pensions. There was a lot of discussion about probation officers, and they're creating a separate differential pension plan for them at the legislature this year. Para and others raised a couple issues with that. What they ended up doing was creating a working group to say like, hey, let's create this working group where we have public employers and public employees and make recommendations on how we want to treat these pension plans for 911 telecommunicators and probation officers moving forward. That report is due to the legislature in January, and I think they're going to meet for the first time in the next week or two. Any questions on anything there? All right, I think we can go to the next one, okay, just wanted to wrap up just talking about our policy process a little bit. It's going to be starting in August and run through December, basically, but we're going to have our board kind of set their high-level priorities. What should we be thinking about? What should we be talking about at the legislature? And then we have the policy committees with county staff kind of try to move some of those forward and bring other issues that they're hearing from their county to see, hey, are we hearing this in other counties? What kind of statewide policy solutions do we want to look at? So those drafts are reviewed by the board and by the county administrators as they move along. And that's kind of our guiding light at the legislature, that legislative document. We can and do work on other issues outside of it if they're statewide and they affect counties. But I did just want to talk about that a little bit just so you're aware of it. And I think we can go to the next slide, which I believe is the last one. So this is just contact information, but I think a natural question, and it's already kind of come up, is like, well, what's next? You know, and the specter of a possible special session is out there. You know, the state did end this budget session with a $1.9 billion surplus. They cut spending in the out biennium by about $1.8 billion. So we're in better fiscal shape than we were from a state perspective at the beginning of session, but we still have revenues coming in lower than spending. And then there is kind of the question of, you know, what's going to happen with the federal bill, right? Whether it's Medicaid or SNAP. It's really difficult to answer that question. And Micah, to be clear, doesn't lobby on federal issues, but it is something that we monitor to try to keep pace with and answer any questions that come up. You know, I don't think a special session is guaranteed necessarily, but it's certainly possible. And like it's been mentioned before, there are a lot of different political dynamics around that. And just the reason I mentioned that is because I do think that, you know, I know that sometimes it's hard to see the absence of a negative as a positive. This year at the legislature, it was like we were able to get some wins by avoiding cuts, right? I mean, that's really the story of this session, but it's not guaranteed that we'll be able to do that every time, right? This year we were able to do it. I mean, looking at taxes, looking at HHS and other areas, I think, you know, are there still some cuts and cost shifts in there that they passed? Yes, absolutely. But it's the state fiscal picture is not like it's solved, and we're going to be talking about this next year and the year after that, just to be totally frank, is my assessment of the situation from a budget perspective. So yeah,
Thank you.
happy to answer any questions.
Is that the end of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is I'm gonna make a bit of a jump, and this is and I want to do this since we have Micah staff here. Commissioner Ward, if you're willing, I'm sorry I didn't give you a heads up about this. You and I had a phone conversation last week after the shooting of Senator Huffman and Speaker Hortman. I was going to ask you at the end if you could just repeat what you shared with me, and then if it's
Maureen put it.
So that was from you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because then what I was also going to ask for was like a moment of silence. I don't mean like 10 minutes. I mean like 15 seconds. Sure. Because I know all of you work with those people. My son works in the state Senate. He's on the Senate K-12 policy committee. He works under Senator Swazinski, et cetera. So he works very closely with Senator Hoffman. But I know a lot of you work with both Senator Hoffman and especially Melissa Hortman. So if it's okay, Commissioner Ward,
sure.
If could we just take 10 seconds for a moment of silence
to
honor what happened in St. Paul, because it has impacted, I think, every elected official across the state. It's freaked my wife out. It's freaked people all across the political spectrum. And this is not a partisan issue. There's plenty of crazies all over the place, et cetera.
Sure, sure. We can take, yes, we did put out a word, Ms. Holte put it on our website, and the loss of the Hortman family, and then the devastation to the Hoffman family. So yeah, let's take a 10-second remembrance of those elected and families. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing that. Thank you for the work that you guys do up in St. Paul. It's important work.
And I just want to say, I think your use of MCIT building is a sound thing. I am on the MCIT board, and we did say that we wanted you to use that facility. And so, good.
Yeah, I think it works great for us, for our space. So we're very,
Improvement in the technology.
What
Yeah.
we
So
gotta
much
do
bigger.
though is get Mayor Carter to fix Jackson Street. If you come up-
you're telling me, I live near there.
Get Mayor Carter to fix that street. It's one of the worst streets. You leave the Capitol, you come up to go to, that's what I used to go to MCIT, and if we would have taken that on a road tour, it would have been devastation.
Mhm.
But no, thank you for using our facility there, and it just makes sense to use it.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
for coming.
Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair. Thanks, members.
Thank you. Safe travels going back. I'm assuming you're going back tonight. It's daylight, so yeah, be careful. There's a lot of critters on the road. And be safe. All right, our last item, 7.2, is to discuss and or appoint Citizen Advisory Committee, and that was a person applying for our Extension Committee.
It's a 3 appointment, isn't it?
No, it's a new,
No,
I thought.
No.
Oh, I apologize.
it's new. I don't know the person, but it looked like the resume, he had a lot of good experiences.
I don't know him, but he was in Project Science when my husband was teaching
Oh.
at the middle school.
Really? I don't recognize.
He
that
and his
name.
brother both.
Okay, all right, so do we have a motion to?
so
appoint?
moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Meyer to appoint Jonas from Beta, I believe, to our Extension Committee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, he is approved. And I think that may fill that, well, there might still be one. I'm not, we'll have to check.
No, there was only one vacancy.
There was one vacancy, so that would fill that committee. I think, do we have any vacancies on any of our committees? And I know that's on the website, so I should look there to see.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, we need any more citizen volunteers. All right, Commissioner Vagley, you had some.
Thank you for allowing that moment of silence for Speaker Hortman, and she will be lying in state. Is it on Friday, et cetera? Since we last met, it was Father's Day, so I just wanted to say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers here in this room and out in Winona County. Also, last night, Commissioner Ward and I and Ross, was there 19 other people? I think, no, 17.
Yeah.
All but 2 of the people that we had appointed were able to make the comp plan meeting. And it's probably going to be impossible to find a time when 21 people can meet. It was a long meeting, lots of information. I'm looking forward to those discussions. People are not holding back, which is wonderful. There is a room full of different views, as it should be. This is not North Korea. We should have a wide range of views, and I got an earful already. So that's a good sign that people are going to be having conversations. So I'm looking forward. The next meeting wasn't set.
No, we did not
but
set it.
that'll be hopefully, I think, in 2 months or so roughly. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Elsing.
Just a couple things. Something that keeps coming up is the new rifle law. Have you heard anything with this yet?
New
A little
rifle?
bit.
Yeah.
I was talked to at the township officers meeting about that.
Yeah, so, and just, I think that's gonna come to some point where each county board has to decide whether that's applicable. So I've had some different constituents
Oh,
before me.
looks like we
Oh,
have
yeah.
somebody.
I can confirm that, yes. So they did repeal the statewide shotgun zone, but each county board is able to have their own, set their own
Correct.
standard there. Yep.
Yep, so I do believe that's gonna come to some point to the board, and so I've had some people reach out to us about that and just the pros and the cons and different things like that, so
Okay.
just give some thought into that.
And I apologize, Commissioner Elsing. And as long as Mike is here, do we wait for it to come to us, or does the county board initiate this process? Because the township officer who was talking, I think from Hart Township, he was asking me, when will the county do something? And I wasn't sure. Does the county initiate it or do we wait? Or do you know, Commissioner Elsing?
I believe that you have to initiate it. I don't think the state is going to do anything. They're repealing the statewide shotgun zone. And so it's up to each individual county board what they want to do.
So are you requesting at some point?
Yeah, it's, you know, basically it's repealed. So, you know, I've had some people ask, is there any concern about undoing the repeal, basically? So,
Mhm.
and I mean, for the most part, everybody's in favor of it just because of the deer population and things like that. And the whole idea is it's getting out of hand and they need more opportunity to eliminate some of these problems, especially with CWD and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So, I just didn't know anybody
Who
else
would-
heard any.
who would bring something? I'm not a gun toting.
Did you want to?
I don't know anything about it.
No, I just, no, and I wasn't 100% sure of the process either and
Yeah.
what we had to do and if we had to do anything. So I just wanted
Is that
to.
the sheriff?
Yeah, can I,
Commissioner
so
Meyer?
to clarify that there were zones where you couldn't use a rifle, you could only use a shotgun.
Correct.
And now you can use a rifle anywhere.
Up to 900.
Anyway, yep.
Yeah.
Rifle
Yeah.
and shotgun.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, if
Yes.
it would be helpful, I could follow up and send the specific language that was included in the environment bill, that both the repealer and then I believe there's two other sections in the bill around kind of what
Yep.
rights counties have now. And so if that's helpful, I can send that right away. Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Because the way it stands now after the repeal is that stands for this fall already? Do you know?
I don't remember the effective date off the top of my head of that repealer. So that would be included in the follow-up. Yeah.
Okay.
And especially with the way things are now and the way I believe the intent behind it was because there's such a population problem and they're trying to control this problem to protect the animals and everything else. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
All right, that'd
Okay.
be,
Yeah.
Thank
that'd
you.
be helpful.
Wonderful.
Thank
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I just want to remind everybody the fair is coming up. So you're going to hear me say that until after the fair. So.
Yes, the Great Winona County Get Together, Winona County Fair, July 9th through the 13th. And we will not meet again before we have our great Independence Day, July 4th. So just everybody be safe and be happy and have fun. And we approved our first marijuana growing operation tonight in Winona County. So lots is happening. Thank you, Micah, for coming down, all the good information and everything. Keep up the good work. Any other business to come before the county?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Elsing, second by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.